The courthouse steps were cold stone, worn smooth by years of footsteps, arguments, and verdicts. Pigeons scattered as city workers' pressure washed the sidewalk. No one noticed the man sitting near the edge. He didn't panhandle, didn't speak, just sat with his back against the brick column, legs stretched, eyes half-lidded under the shade of a faded ball cap. His jacket was heavy, frayed at the cuffs. His boots were steel-toed but soft at the heel. A duffel bag lay beside him, zipped, resting like a companion. Most people assumed he was asleep. A few whispered the word homeless and looked away politely. Security glanced at him once and kept walking. One officer, barely out of academy, nudged the other and muttered, "If he's still here by noon, call someone to move him." His partner glanced over. "He's not bothering anyone." "That's not the point," the first said. "Public spaces aren't shelters." The man didn't flinch, didn't look up, but one boot tapped slightly, just once, like he'd heard it all before. His presence was quiet enough not to provoke, just another figure in the noise of downtown. Only one thing stood out, barely. A small cloth square, stitched onto the edge of his bag. Black thread, almost invisible. But to the trained eye, it wasn't decoration. It was earned, a subdued SEALteam patch. No color, no fanfare. He didn't move much. Just lifted a styrofoam cup to his lips every few minutes. No steam. Just coffee, hours cold. Inside the courthouse, the usual rhythm, attorneys muttering over motions, defendants shifting in plastic chairs, a bailiff tapping a clipboard, and out front, the man remained. Motionless, eyes down, waiting for nothing in particular. At 10:41 a.m., a passing law clerk brushed too close to his leg and muttered, "Watch it, old man." The man didn't respond. A few minutes later, a group of recruits from a nearby Navy prep program passed by, laughing about something none of them would remember. One of them tossed a crumpled wrapper that landed near the bag. Still, no response. Only his left thumb moved, brushing once across the duffel's corner, the stitched patch, then still again. By 11 o'clock, a few pigeons had gathered again near his boots. He didn't shoo them away. The courthouse clock chimed. No one noticed the unmarked black vehicle pull up across the street. No lights. No markings. Just quiet engine hum. The driver didn't get out. The man under the column slowly turned his head toward the sound. Just a glance. Then back down. Someone inside the courthouse would soon call for order. But outside nothing moved, except a single, unseen presence now watching from the passenger seat. The Admiral hadn't stepped out yet, but he would. And when he did, everything would shift. He didn't ask for much. Just the steps. The cold stone. His coffee, always black, never warm. He took small sips like it still meant something. Some mornings, a city worker swept past without a word. One nodded once, but only once. Most didn't see him. He sat in the same spot, back to the pillar, bag beside him, cap low. The badge on his duffel, frayed SEALteam insignia, caught no one's eye. That was the point. His boots had tread left, but not much. His jacket, stitched at the wrist, carried an old scent, sand, oil, time. The courthouse behind him stayed busy. Attorneys buzzed like flies around tired clients. Security officers leaned on metal detectors. No one stopped for the man on the steps. At 10:58 a.m., a black vehicle pulled to the curb across the street. No markings, no sirens, no urgency. The door opened slow. He heard it. Didn't look, didn't need to. A figure stepped out. Tall, measured, civilian clothes, but the way he moved said everything. Not cautious, not nervous, just present. The Admiral. He didn't cross right away. Just watched. Street noise rolled between them, tires, footsteps, a bark from a leash dog. The man on the ground didn't move. The Admiral stepped forward, stopped near the edge of the sidewalk. No handshake, no smile. "You still carry it?" he asked. The old man tapped the duffel. Once. "Too much metal now," he said. "Not enough soul." The Admiral nodded, quiet. Then, "I'll come back around noon." The man didn't look up, just gave the smallest nod. The Admiral turned and left. No one else noticed, but the pigeons returned, and the silence stayed. The court clerk was new. Mid-20s, pressed shirt, sleeves too long. He liked order, liked knowing where people belong. So when he stepped outside for a breath and saw the old man still there, slouched, quiet, unmoving, something in him bristled. He watched from the top of the stairs, paper cup in one hand, frowned. The guy hadn't begged, hadn't spoken to anyone. But he looked too settled, like he owned the spot. The clerk took a sip, eyes narrowing at the duffel bag. That patch. It didn't match. He stepped down a few stairs casually, kept his voice even. You can't stay there all day. No answer. He tried again. You hear me, sir? Still nothing. Just a sip of cold coffee. The clerk exhaled through his nose. I'm gonna have to ask you to move along. Courthouse isn't a shelter. The man looked up. Not fast, not angry. Just looked. His eyes were pale gray, but they didn't meet the clerk's. They looked through him, then down again. That was it. No protest. No argument. Just stillness. The clerk shifted. He didn't know why, but his chest tightened. Just a little. You got ID? He asked, quieter. The man didn't move, just adjusted the strap on his bag. A guard stepped outside, leaning in the doorway, watching, not interfering. The clerk turned, embarrassed. I'll call someone, he muttered. The guard didn't answer. Back inside, the clerk tapped on a computer, scanned a few alerts. Nothing. Outside, the man hadn't moved. But now a second figure had stepped into view. Young. Navy haircut. Dress uniform, sleeves rolled high. He paused on the sidewalk, noticed the man, slowed. Then he saw the patch. He stopped completely, looked again. His mouth opened slightly. He knew that trident. Not from TV. Not from Google. From briefing slides. From classified case studies. He didn't say a word, just stared. Then he stepped back, because the name stitched under the patch was one he'd seen before, buried in a legend few dared to repeat. At 11:47 a.m., the young uniformed SEAL was still standing there, still staring. Across the courthouse steps, the old man hadn't moved. His coffee cup now rested on the pavement, empty. His hands stayed on the bag. The clerk returned, clipboard in hand, chest puffed like a man who'd found his courage in policy. Sir, he said louder this time, I've already notified security. You'll need to clear this area. No reaction. Do you understand? You're loitering on federal property. The uniformed SEAL stepped forward, slow. Is there a problem here? He asked. The clerk looked over, eyes narrowing. Not yet, he said. Unless he keeps ignoring instructions. The SEAL glanced down at the old man, then at the duffel. He saw the edge of the patch again. He also saw the man's hand, calm, resting on the zipper. There was no tension in the fingers, no threat, only presence. Do you know who he is? The SEAL asked softly. The clerk scoffed. Someone who doesn't belong here. The old man looked up again. Just once. Not at the clerk, at the SEAL. A small nod. Acknowledgement, not invitation. The SEAL swallowed, then stepped back. He didn't argue. Didn't defend. Just said, You might want to ask the Admiral when he gets back. The clerk blinked. Admiral? The SEAL nodded once. He's not late. And just then, right on cue, the black car returned. Same hum. Same quiet arrival. The back door opened. No ceremony. No sound. And the Admiral stepped out. His coat was off now. Rolled sleeves. Collar open. He crossed the street without pause, eyes locked on the man at the base of the column. The clerk opened his mouth, about to speak. The Admiral didn't look at him. Instead, he walked straight to the old man and said, with nothing but gravity in his voice, Permission to join you, Master Chief. The silence that followed dropped heavier than any gavel inside that courthouse. The clerk didn't speak again. He didn't need to, because whatever story he thought he was writing had just been overwritten by history. The Admiral didn't sit. He stood at the foot of the step, eyes steady, hands clasped behind his back. The old man gave the slightest nod. Nothing more. The young SEAL stepped aside. He knew enough now not to ask questions. The clerk hovered, unsure. The Admiral turned his head just enough. That'll be all, he said. It wasn't a request. The clerk faded back toward the courthouse doors, jaw tight, pride bruised. When he was gone, the Admiral knelt, one knee to the concrete, and unzipped the front pocket of the duffel. No objection. Just permission, quiet and unspoken. From inside he pulled a cloth-wrapped object, heavy, folded. He rested it across his knee and peeled back the edge. A rusted metal plate, dull gray, scored with deep cuts, numbers faint. At the bottom corner, barely visible under decades of wear, was a stamp. An SWDG 014/CJ Cross/1993. The Admiral let the cloth fall back into place. He didn't need to explain. The young SEAL didn't ask. But he knew what it was. A rifle plate, custom forged, issued only to Tier 1 snipers during a series of missions that still didn't officially exist, and the name, CJ Cross. It wasn't on any roster now. Not in public records. But in certain briefings, whispered in rooms with no windows, it was spoken with weight. Not a man. A shadow. A legend wrapped in misdirection. Cross had made shots most said were impossible. 2 confirmed rescues behind enemy lines, 1 without exfil. He'd disappeared in 2004. No one ever confirmed why. The Admiral rose to his feet, then stood silently beside the man once more. No salute, no medal, just presence. The young SEAL stepped forward, looking to the older man now not with curiosity, but with reverence. He didn't speak, but his hands moved slowly to his own chest, and from beneath his collar, he pulled a coin. Black finish. No emblem on the face. Just a single notch carved into the edge. He held it out uncertain. The old man looked at him, held that gaze, then reached out, not to take, but to close the young SEAL's fingers around the coin again. A quiet no. Not yet. Not yours to carry. Not today. The Admiral didn't linger. He placed the cloth-wrapped relic gently back in the duffel and zipped it closed without ceremony. Then he stepped away. No words. Just a glance. The kind passed between men who had survived things no file could explain. Inside the courthouse, a judge called for recess. Outside, something heavier was taking place. The young SEAL remained still. His hand closed tightly around the coin he hadn't been allowed to give. Across the plaza, a man in uniform slowed his walk, noticing the quiet circle forming. Then another, and another. Within minutes, 4 more officers had drifted near the steps. None spoke. They didn't form a line. Didn't post up. They just stood, drawn by something unspoken, the way gravity pulls without asking. From the courthouse doors, a woman paused with a file pressed to her chest. She looked once, tilted her head, then slowly walked down the steps. Her pace slowed as she passed. She didn't ask who he was. Didn't need to. Because now, even without a name, they all felt it. Some kind of shift, like the wind before a storm, except gentler. Heavy, but not hostile. A presence that didn't announce itself, but didn't ask permission to exist either. At 12:36 p.m., a second black vehicle pulled up. Different plate. Different driver. Same silence. A rear door opened. A man stepped out, older, heavier, but sharp. 4 stars on his lapel, even in civilian wear. He scanned the crowd, then the steps. When he saw the man with the duffel, he stopped mid-step. His mouth tightened. Then slowly, deliberately, he walked forward, pausing beside the Admiral. They exchanged no salute, only the General's hand, pressed briefly over his chest, and one word. Sir? The old man didn't rise, didn't smile. But for the first time all day, he spoke a full sentence. Don't use that word if you don't mean it. The General nodded, solemn. I do. A moment passed, then another. Across the plaza, people began to slow their steps. Phones stayed in pockets. The atmosphere didn't invite interruption. It invited stillness. And in that stillness, a single truth began to ripple out across every uniform, every gaze, every corner of that open space. He wasn't forgotten. He was known. And the weight of his silence was louder than any parade. The courthouse had gone quiet. No sirens, no flag folding, no orders barked across the plaza. Just a soft shift of boots on concrete. A slow gravity gathering around one man, still seated at the edge of a step, thumb resting on the corner of an old duffel bag. The General stayed only a moment longer. Then he offered a nod, low, respectful, and walked back to his car. The Admiral didn't follow. The young SEAL stayed rooted near the edge of the column. He hadn't moved since the coin had been returned to his hand. Then, slowly, the old man reached into his coat. Not the bag. Not the pocket. From beneath the inner lining, he pulled something wrapped in faded cloth. He unfolded it with care, not hesitation, until only a small circle of polished brass sat in his palm. It caught the sunlight just once. No markings on the face. Just an edge worn smooth by time and touch. He held it out. Not to the Admiral. To the young SEAL. The younger man stepped forward, unsure. His hand hovered, then reached. The coin passed between them like something ancient, not awarded, but entrusted. The young man didn't thank him. Didn't speak. He just closed his fingers around the weight and bowed his head once. The old man looked back down at the ground, like nothing had happened. But something had. Because when the Admiral stepped back, he spoke one last time. "Some of us keep records." He looked at the duffel. "Some don't." Then he nodded once, to the young SEAL, not the man on the step, and turned toward the street. A moment later, the car door closed behind him. The engine faded. And the man with the patch stayed exactly where he'd always been, quiet, still, unmoved. Except now, someone else stood guard. Not in formation. Not by order. Just a quiet posture beside him, holding a coin, looking outward, waiting. By the time the courthouse emptied for the day, the man was gone. No one saw him leave. The pigeons still wandered the plaza, as if nothing had changed. A paper cup rolled under the bench. The steps were empty. The duffel was no longer there. But something remained. Right where he'd sat, folded neatly and placed with care, was the cloth that once held the coin. And resting on top, a single brass casing. Fired long ago, polished by hand. On its base, etched faintly, "Range 721, wind 11 miles per hour." Nothing else. No initials. No unit. No quote. Just a silent trace of something no one could explain, but everyone felt. The young SEAL found it first. He didn't call it in. Didn't touch it. He just stood there, cap in hand. By then, word had already spread. Not through press or posts, but through the small, quiet channels where operators talk. Where names are never spoken, only nodded at. Where coins change hands in silence. Back at the local base, a locker appeared on the edge of the range. No label. No lock. Just a line etched into the steel. "Respect isn't asked, it's remembered." Inside, a single challenge coin. Left for the next one. The young SEAL placed the one he had beside it, and walked away. No plaque. No flag. No funeral. Just presence. A bench no one sat on anymore. A patch that lived only in memory. And a name no one spoke, because they didn't have to. He had shown up once, then left. But not before reminding them all what it looked like when discipline didn't need a voice, when history wore a frayed cap, and when a sniper, long retired, passed down the last thing he ever carried. Silence.